um, Adventure League, Adventure Series. Why don't you tell us about how you got involved in that?
You got it. So the water cooler chat is how I got involved in it. Is that I'm the loudest, most obnoxious, foaming at the mouth Dragonlance nerd in Baldman Games, and so my name kind of like just stayed in people's, in the ambient sound of every conversation. Really, what ended up happening though is it was kind of been brewing for about a year or more between Dave at Baldwin Games and Watsy trying to figure out how this was going to end up getting rolled out. And so whenever they made the decision to move forward with handing it off to Dave as kind of like the primary go forward with Adventurers League would go through Baldwin Games, and that they would produce the majority of the material, if not all of it. A call went to everybody. It went out into the ether, and there were lots and lots of people that vied for it. And then same thing goes for aside from just Dragonlance, he also has Dreams of the Red Wizards, the Moonshay stuff, where he's got these 3 different campaigns that they're writing stuff for, and you've got story architects for all 3. And the difference this time around is that we have 2 folks that are working on each story arc, right? So you got myself and Alan Patrick came on, and we're working together on it, which Alan's been phenomenal, been a really huge help. He knows so much about like the inside track on an Adventurers League, the pitfalls and the perils, and like don't do this, don't do that kind of stuff. It really helps out quite a bit. I feel like it's like I'm the blind man being led by someone who can see sometimes, but I put my name in there, and I put together what it seemed silly at the time, but I put together like a resume of all the writing credits that I've done, and like how it coupled with other day job things that I did, like project management. I'm PMP certified. I'm in management and leadership. And like, so a lot of this is it's not just writing the adventures. It's also coordinating people and coordinating projects. So I don't know if that made a difference or not, but around, I'd say the very beginning of September, the first half of September, Dave reached out to me, told me that if I wanted it, here's what it means, here's what it really is, and that he told me I'd be working with Alan, and we've been going from there.
John, David?
So so you mentioned writing a couple of the adventures, or are you doing the primary writing in all of the adventures?
Yeah, so I've been waiting so long to write a Dragonlance adventure. I will publicly admit my own selfishness. I gave myself, essentially what ended up happening is we had really, really tight timelines to get an adventure or 2 out for PAX Unplugged, right? Really, really tight. So Wizards wanted something really big. So we're like, well, let's do the first ever Dragonlance Adventurers League epic with the name epic in it. That brand means something, right? Not a special like we've had with Moonshays in the past, like an actual epic. So that's pretty cool. So we'll do that. But I told Dave, I'm like, I've been reading through chapter 2 of the new Dragonlance book, and they have all of these like preludes and kind of, it's almost like a glorified session 0 that's about 2 to 3 hours, right? And I said, I really like that idea, and there are some things in here that I think that we could noodle on. And I had the availability, and I said, well, I'll just put together a prelude for us that's 2 hours long, that takes some of that, but it builds it out for our campaign to get people on ramped into the Vault of the Undying storyline. And I'd already planned for myself. My one selfish act was going to be writing the first adventure after the epic. And then after that point, I would say we've got theme, we've got the feel that I'm going for with the story, and that people could use that as a template to write the rest of their adventures off of. So I was really involved in the epic with Krishna Simoins and Jeremy Arnold, helping them out. So was Alan. Just so we could get land the groundwork for how the adventures would move forward after that. After this point, though, once this next adventure is done, it'll be premiering at the VDDW in February. After that's done, I don't plan on writing adventures for Dragonlance until probably the back end, maybe one more before it's all is said and done, because it's just a lot. And the timelines have been brutal.
So, like, what makes the an iconic Dragonlance adventure? What makes it Dragonlance and not, Forgotten Realms with a dragon? What are those core elements for you?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I've asked that question to myself a lot and to the community. I asked the community a lot. And what I get back from the community is things like the setting, the pieces of the setting, right? Like the backdrop is really important to a Dragonlance thing. Like there are 3 moons, not 1, 3 moons. And there are Kender. That makes it feel like Dragonlance. Draconians make it feel like Dragonlance. Knights make it feel like Dragonlance. A Mageocracy, or this like clandestine secret organization of mages that govern how magic is utilized and how powerful you can be in practicing your magic without being a renegade. Those things are all Dragonlance-y, right? I think, but those are very visual and not super conceptual things that make Dragonlance. For me, and for a lot of the folks that I've kind of reached out to, is it's epic. In that, if you think about Joe Manganiello, I keep using his quote over and over and over again. He did an interview, I think it was with Conan O'Brien or something like that during the pandemic, and he said Dragonlance is the Star Wars of Dungeons and Dragons. And so the War of the Lance is essentially episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Star Wars, which is, probably arguably everybody's favorite trilogy out of all the Star Wars stuff, arguably anyway. And I think a lot of it has to do with it's like this, it's encapsulated in a particular time period, and that's why people want to go back to the War of the Lance, and why I feel like the book goes back to the War of the Lance, because all the meat and potatoes of what makes Dragonlance feel like it is this world conflict that's going on. So between the War of the Lance makes it feel like Dragonlance, the gods are meddlesome. The good, the neutral, and the evil. The neutral are supposed to be like, let's maintain the balance, everybody, but they're just as meddlesome as anybody else. Reorx, the god of the dwarves, is just trouble with a capital T. But yeah, so like the gods being really, really involved and having interpersonal relationships with characters, like we'll go back to Fizban, spoiler alert, and his involvement in it, or things like that. It also, I went back and looked through the old material. There's actually, it says specifically in the old AD&D Dragonlance Adventures module, here's what a Dragonlance campaign should feel like. And it was like super progressive back then, because we were moving away from Gygaxian fungeons into an actual narrative and a story-driven game, right? So in a respect, I think you guys had Adam on last week.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Adam said in one of his videos was how Dragonlance broke D&D. It kind of did. It didn't break it for the worst. There are some old things that we were doing in D&D that were fine, but here's another way of doing it. And I think that's how Dragonlance kind of rolled out. It's just like this episodic, serialized story that was like the beginning, middle, and end to the adventure, as opposed to go to a dungeon, kill a bunch of rando monsters, go to the next level of the dungeon, rinse and repeat, and all that kind of good stuff. So at least that's like the 1,000-foot view of what makes Dragonlance, I think.
Cool.
John, I love how much your passion for Dragonlance just comes out of you when you're talking about it. It makes me feel like this storyline is definitely in good hands. Can you share a little bit about your process for coming up with an epic story that folks can play at the table at conventions and so on?
You got it. Yeah. So the first thing that I had to do is I had to see what Wizards was doing first. So I'm lucky enough to be a part of the playtest for the adventures that are coming out for WotC. So I've seen Dragonlance, I want to say since April-ish. I got the book, The Shadows of the Dragon Queen, and it's like almost ready for primetime form. And then whenever I got the job, they gave me the print copy of it, not an actual print copy, but the layout, a PDF copy of it. So the first thing that I did was I need to know what limitations are being put on me by Wizards, because this is supposed to be this homogeneous, synchronous experience, right? So that was the first thing. I need to know when they were going to end up, what period in the world's history that they were going to run their campaign, and determine, am I going to do it at the same time? Does that make sense? Etc. So the good thing was I already have written homebrew campaigns, and whenever I'm notorious for over preparing for things, and so from my crib notes for an adventure are pretty much an adventure a lot of the time, where I'm just like I get ideas and it's all bullet pointed out, and then I flesh it out more so that I can go to it as a reference, in case I forgot something, because sometimes I'll have like those, midnight snack standing in front of the refrigerator. Oh my God, I have this really awesome idea. I'll get on my phone, I'll text myself something, right? So the process really was like looking at what I had to work off of and seeing like, what do I already have first off, right? Some of these quote unquote great ideas that I'd had. So I've had like pre-War of the Lance adventures that I'd set for my home players that didn't have the gods involved, no healing magic, all that good stuff. And spoiler alert, for the book, it's set almost exactly on that line is where we are. It's like just the opening salvo of the War of the Lance in what's referred to as the Vanguard campaign, where the dragon armies are coming in they've already conquered the lands in the east of Ansalon, and they're moving into the west, and they're going to start causing trouble in Solamnia, right? Which is like the homeland of the Knights of Solamnia. And so it was looking at that, and it was thinking, okay, so now I got my setting, I've got my timeline, and now it's time to do a crap load of research. So much research. I love Dragonlance, and I've read the books. I reread the books, the original trilogy, everything that revolved around the War of the Lance in particular. I didn't reread like the Legends trilogy or War of Souls or anything like that. I just tried to stay inside of that little nest. And then again, took a look at my old notes with the stuff that I'd had, NPCs that I'd used in the past, and things like that. And then once I kind of had like collected my thoughts on it, then I had to sit down and stop myself, because I got really excited with a million different ideas, and I got overwhelmed by all the different directions that it could go in. It's this really amazing opportunity and stuff like that. And so what I ended up finally doing is I had a conversation with Troy Sandlin and Zach Owens, who are the co-hosts on Geeks Camp for the podcast that we run. And one of the things that I think that Zach, I'm going to give Zach credit for this. One of the things that Zach said as I'm having this like existential crisis, oh my God, Dave made a mistake. I'm the wrong person for this job. Zach said, well, think about it like this. Give yourself kind of like a mission statement or a vision for what you want the story to be. And when I thought about that, I was like, as much as people will dump on The Force Awakens, there's a reason why J.J. Abrams and those involved did The Force Awakens the way they did. People complain about it. Well, it's just the original trilogy all over again. Like, yeah, it kind of is. But think about it. It was 40 years plus 50 years after those had been released. And who remembered, like this generation, like Gen Z, millennials and stuff like that, they're trying to capture the minds and imaginations and spirits of this generation. They've already got you, nerd. Okay. you already love Star Wars. So cool your jets. So, but they're not going to go back and watch as much as the movies stand up. Like getting them to sit down and watch something that was from 77, 80, and 83 sometimes is a lot to ask, right? And so, so the philosophy is they played the greatest hits in that movie, and that was to get them onboarded into this next trilogy. Now, I'm not going to talk about what happened to the trilogy after that, because it'll just be an hour of me foaming at the mouth about how upset I was. But I looked at this as an opportunity to do that also. You kind of have the way that I've sussed it out. It's like it's three different tiers of fandom. You have the what the heck's a Dragonlance? I don't know what that is, but I mean I'll give it a try. Or it's the only thing that's available right now for me to play. Right? That's the first tier. Second tier is, I remember those books. I played those. I read them whenever I was a kid or in high school or whatever, and I remember playing a couple games. That was pretty cool. I should do that. And then you got the tier threes, which are the just neck beard fanboys that love it so much, or fangirls, or whatever. And so what I tried to do from there was say, I'm going to best serve the tier ones and the tier twos. I want to on-ramp as many people into Dragonlance as possible while still paying it an homage to it and being as respectful and almost reverence. So it's a level of reverence of like, I'm not going to try to change change the sausage or the recipe of the sausage, but this is going to be a lot of like, it needs to feel a lot like that first book for people that first come in of like the gods are returning and this thing is happening and this thing over here. Like, and so if they go and they read that Dragons of Autumn Twilight book, they're like, oh, I played that. I played like when we played that, the story unfolded a lot like it, but it's still its own thing. Long answer, but that's it.
So I've run Dragons of Divinity, and I think you really captured what you just talked about. I played the original Dragonlance back in 84, 85 when it came out, and it felt like that. And you really captured, I think, the whole essence of how the gods start to reveal themselves to the world. And so my question is, what kind of scope will this campaign have? I know you probably can't share details, but do you know, is it a 2-year campaign, a 1-year campaign? Does it go to mid-levels? Does it go to epic levels? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty easy to answer. Thank you. I'll answer that one. Dragons, the Vault of the Undying storyline will be between 12 and 15 adventures, more than likely. And it really boils down to player demand, where it goes from there. This is a story, but it doesn't have to be the only story. We can do this. I'll do this for the next decade if people love it, right? If people bite, and if I don't screw it up, or if we manage it correctly, we can keep going from here. That's kind of like and Dave with Baldwin is said the same thing. But it really does boil down to player demand and whether people are playing it or not.
How are you seeing demand? You've had it run. Have you had feedback yet at all from the BDDW?
Yeah. So, luckily we had, but even before the virtual weekend release in December, we had PAX U, which was great because I actually ran 4 tables. Hang on, mental check. Yes, 4 sessions, 4 2-hour slots of Dragons of Divinity for 4 different full tables, which was really great. And the player feedback was really, really positive. And I didn't tell them that I wrote it so that I didn't like completely taint the feedback pool. But player feedback was really good. I've had really positive dungeon master feedback, like from yourself, Tom. Thank you and David, both of you. Thank you for your kind words about it. But with this, the feedback is still really, really important. I thrive on constructive feedback, so people don't have to like massage my ego. I know that the things that I write are not perfect. And there are certain perspectives that I either miss or that are mine. There were things that even at PAX U with the Epic, where we found not holes necessarily, but things, just gaps that needed to be filled, which is a gap as a whole. Leave me alone. We found a couple of gaps in there and things that needed nuances that need to be tweaked and things like that. So those changes are being made for the January run, and same thing goes for Divinity. So the feedback's been really, really positive in regards to, as far as I'm aware, every single table at the VDDW was either sold out or had nearly full tables, which is good. That's exactly what we want. Aside from that, though, I haven't really heard specifically, because Dave has gone into kind of like holiday slumber, or not really holiday slumber. He gave himself some time for rest and relaxation from the holidays, but he's also gearing up for Winter Fantasy. So it's really tough to get a hold of Dave right now, which is totally expected. So I'm not entirely sure what the exact, like, if we have any survey results or anything like that came back on it yet. I'll be excited to see, though.
So do you have plans with any of the upcoming adventures to try and do what the box set did and incorporate elements of the board game that came with the campaign?
Yeah.
Party Epics or something?
That is a great question. That is one of the questions I asked at PAX U with Dave, and is like, can we ask WotC if we can play with Warriors of Krynn? Can we use that and like create bolt-on scenarios? Because really, once you've got the board game, if the extensibility of the game becomes just new pages that you add to the scenario booklet, right? So,
Right.
But it's not OGL. So we have to go and ask for permission to use it. And that's still in progress. They may do it. If they do, I'll jump at the opportunity. Both Alan and I have talked about it, and I've already looped in a couple of board gaming super nerds that I know that are like the Risk and Axis and Allies elite that know all that do like to do that kind of stuff on a regular basis in case it does work out.
You've been working with Alan Patrick, who spent many years as an Adventurers League administrator, and certainly I know has learned a lot about players and running these sorts of adventures. Mm-hmm. Is there any advice that you got from him that proved particularly useful for you, or maybe might help home DMs with their own games?
Yeah, so when the relationship with Alan was interesting, because when he came on board, it was, well, Alan's just going to be here whenever if you are not available, or if you need something, just go and ask him for something. But more and more, I've leaned on Alan for guidance, if nothing else. He helped out just tremendously with the epic. Essentially, whenever that was turned in, it was, again, the timelines were really tight, and so the writers gave us a lot of it was amazing. Like, I really enjoyed the epic that they gave us, but we still had to make some formatting changes and stuff like that. So between Alan and I, we hammered that out together, and now the back end of it, we're looping those epic designers back into it now that we've had some more breathing room to talk more about like any additional changes. But the things that Alan, I think, has helped out with quite a bit is just navigating the bureaucracy of Adventurers League. Like, don't expect this. If you send this to them, they're not gonna say yes. That's really a lot of it. Is like an example would be the Medallion of Faith, right? To me, is a really important magical item in Dragonlance. It is a symbol of your adherence to a particular order. There are magical properties that are associated to it, and all that good stuff. So whenever I first turned in the draft, or like the 2-pager about like, here's what the adventure is going to look like, you have to put in any magical items that you want to include, not ones that you want to create. And effectively, I created a new magic item, and it was really innocuous. Like, we're talking about, all it really did was, it's a Medallion of Faith that you can use as a holy symbol. And if somebody else wants to be a cleric, you can take that Medallion of Faith and split it, and you can give them a medallion. You can give them a Medallion of Faith also, and that's it. That's all it did. And Alan was like, "That's not gonna fly, man. You can't create magical items like ever in Adventurers League from this level, right? And so you have to use everything that's existing and make some thematic or flavor tweaks and changes to it. But that won't work out." And I'm like, well, I mean, it's not gonna hurt to check and see, right? Because I'm an idiot. I'm like, come on, man. Oh, it's really fine, I'm sure.
What do you know, Alan?
Like, exactly. I don't know. Again, I publicly admit my own faults. It doesn't hurt my feelings, right? And I could probably hear him in the back of his mind going, all right, okie dokie. And so, yeah, sure enough, as soon as it came back, it was like, well, luckily the feedback wasn't, you're an idiot. It was, or what did you ask Alan first? It's probably what. It was like, I think this is great, but let's make this a story award, and then that way it's more nebulous what you can kind of do with it. You can add some mechanical features or things into it without it being a magical item, and so that's essentially why I moved over to that. But it's things like that. He's phenomenal. He's got, and I'm gonna make sure I make it abundantly clear too. Alan loves Dragonlance. I think that's the other thing that's really important in this, is having a partner that loves the setting. He really, really does. Like, he's got some really great ideas. The two of it's gone more from John's going to architect this story to, all right, I did the first like 3 or 4. Alan, let's just do the rest together, because it's just too good to pass up an opportunity to work with him on from that creative aspect also, not just like an administrative and bureaucratic perspective.
Any more burning questions, guys?
Not specifically about Dragonlance.
So, John, just to sign out, tell us what you're up to. Well, obviously writing a lot of Dragonlance, but what else do you have on your plate this year?
Yeah, so for this year, I'm also a co-host for Geeks Can't, which is a podcast that streams on Twitch through World of Game Design on 9:30 and 9:30 Central PM on Sundays and Tuesdays, and we talk about everything. and I will try to slip in some Dragonlance in there, and then they make fun of me. It happens on the regular. But here's the thing: we've been, well, it's almost been 2 years or 3 years now since we've been doing the stream or the podcast together. And the first, I'd say, like 2.5 years was just them roasting me every chance that they got whenever I'd bring something up that was Dragonlance. And then, but now, suck it, Troy and Zach, because my fannery has paid off. I don't know to what degree just yet, but we'll find out. But yeah, we stream and we talk about everything. It's not just D&D. We talk about the state of gaming. Zach is a huge advocate and almost like an evangelist for playing lots of different kinds of systems and games, and how that will inform and improve your Dungeons and Dragons game, which I completely agree with. I'd probably say that before I met Zach and Troy, I had friends of mine, one in particular, shout out to Brian Midget, that would he begged me to play something other than D&D. It's like, come on, man. Like, I've got like all this, like I got this Weird West thing, and I've got Savage Worlds over here. And I'm like, and I would like, okay. And I'd play it and like, let's go play some D&D. And so, and he's super irritated because he worked so hard to try to get my buddy tried to get me out of only D&D, and Troy and Zach were really the only ones that that pulled me out 100%, or not completely, but enough. Yeah. So streaming, lots of running, writing, Dragonlance stuff. That's where I think the majority of my creative efforts going to end up going, is into the Dragonlance campaign. I do some stuff on the side too, but that'll probably go dormant until 2024 at least.
All right. Well, so good, John.
Do you have like house rules from other games you've dabbled with that you bring into your D&D game?
Oh my God, yes! Like all the time. It's crazy. Like these other games do such, like D&D does a particular thing, and I think that a lot of games are like that, where like, here is the box in which, as open-ended as you try to make it, right? Where you try to make it really narrative driven, and it's only a D6, right? Like those kind of games where it's like, and there's so much you could do with it. But the more specialized you get in a rule set, the better it becomes at doing the thing that the game is trying to do. So things like Free League's Alien RPG is hands down the best at ratcheting up tension in a game, right? And stress, like making you at the table, like having like an actual visceral physical response to the stress that the story and the narrative is trying to incorporate into it. So yeah, I'll do that kind of thing. I'll do like at the home games, at least, things like stress and strain and stuff like that. Totally.
Cool. Sorry, Tom.
No, you're good. You're good. All right. Well, let's talk about our plans for 2023. Dave, do you want to kick us off?
Well, I'm back at the game store where I've been running Wednesday games, and this has been interesting for me because I've been doing some campaign plotting, which is something I haven't done in years. Perhaps we could talk about that at some upcoming episode. But I've got Winter Fantasy coming, and I'm looking forward to that because I haven't been to a in-person convention in a while, and I've asked Dave about getting a couple of slots of my own one-shots on the schedule. He seems open to that, and so look for the Curse of Vecna on the Winter Fantasy schedule. That's something that John and Tom, you played a few months ago, and I'm going to be dusting that off for hopefully Winter Fantasy. Looking forward to adding some more DM slots and looking at the schedule and seeing what else to play. So really eager for that, and I'm looking forward to making new friends and meeting some old faces.
All right. So I'll be doing Winter Fantasy as well, and I have my schedule here. Share that. I'm running Dragons of Divinity. The Wednesday night we get there, running Dragons of Divinity again Friday morning. I ran Dragons of Divinity at the 3 a.m. slot at the BDDW.
Ouch.
For the European players. It was funny though, because it wasn't European players. It was U.S. players who could not get a slot. It was so popular that they took the 3 a.m. slot because that's
flattering.
all they can get in on.
That's flattering. I don't know. I don't think there's ever been a Dragonlance game since maybe college, maybe, that I would ever play at 3:00 in the morning under any circumstance. So I'll take it.
Did that up the pressure to deliver a good game, or did it lower the pressure?
Well, I think that was the third time I'd run it by then. And of course, you look like the world superstar DM by the time you're running the same adventure. The
Absolutely.
Third time. Makes you
You didn't even look at your notes.
Yeah. You can just run it. You just stand up there and just run the whole thing by memory.
Yeah.
And then I get to run Dragons of Destruction, which I'm looking forward to because I did not get to do that at the VDW. I am doing it on the January one, on the 13th, 14th, 15th, and then again at Winter Fantasy in person.
Awesome. Yeah, so you'll probably be. I'm assuming that Krishna will probably be adminning. He was one of the ones that actually wrote it. Yeah. And Krishna's body of knowledge when it comes to writing epics, running epics, and having stuff to do with epics was such a huge help. And then Jeremy, like the relationship between the two of them was Krishna's like, I know epics, and he steeples his fingers like Mr. Burns, and then writes a bunch of really great stuff. And then Jeremy's like, yes, but I know Dragonlance, and he steeples his fingers together. So it was a really good partnership between the two of them. Hopefully you'll see that whenever you read through it.
Then I'm going to be doing, let me see if I can get this on the screen here.
Yeah, Krishna's a real agent of chaos.
All right, so in Dragonlance, they had DL 11, which was actually a war game that they did. And I've run this online a couple times, and there's a little bit of talk about maybe doing this. It's actually Andy Demps who's talking about maybe doing this at the convention. If he does, I'll definitely support him. I'm not running it myself specifically, but so if you had a chance to play that, that's a cool thing to check out. You can actually buy it now online.
That's awesome. Yeah, let me know if it goes on. I'll be looking, because pretty much anything that's got Dragonlance in it that isn't my shtick, I'll be there for it. Like I'm bringing the Dragonlance board game from '89. I'll bring that to play after hours.
I'm sure there'll be some people with Warriors of Krynn there. That'd be fun to play at the convention too.
Yep. I'll have a copy of that there too.
All right, and then ongoing schedule after that. Let's see. I'm doing Shadow of the Dragon Queen. We're up to chapter 4B on the 3rd, and we'll finish that up sometime probably in February. And then Keys of the Golden Vault come out right then, so we might run an adventure or two of that. We still have to finish up our Spelljammer adventure. We're halfway through that one. And then the releases the rest of the year, we got the Phandelver campaign. I definitely want to do that. The Book of Many Things, I imagine, is going to be like magic items and stuff, so probably not any adventures there. And then Planescape. I am not a Planescape person. I never played Planescape back in the day. How about you guys? Any of you play Planescape back in the day?
No.
I've actually had the conversation with Zach and Troy after Dave has talked about how much he loves it. And I'm like, I don't know anything. Can you please, like, what's a Planescape, and why do people like it?
Yeah, so that's my plans for the year. And then we got Wizards Present. So that's I think old. This one I think has the things in the right schedule. So it'd be interesting to see what Big B Presents Glory of the Giants will be about. If it's the same as Fizzbands, where it's just basically a collection of rules. That'll be interesting. But Fizzbands also had some dragon layers in it, so there might be some giant layers. Oh, let me share that tab. There might be some giant layers there.
I think we'll see the Goliaths as they were reworked in the playtest, potentially in that.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that they went as hard into Giants as they are. It's like dragons, sure, that makes sense. I'm trying to think of like quintessential D&D monsters, creatures, or otherwise. Giants is great. It's a great one, but like it didn't pop in the top of my head. I was like, why Giants?
So I'm sure you can't share anything, John, but since you're playtesting, have you seen? Well, I can't even say if you've seen the Phandelver campaign yet.
So I have seen some stuff. I have not seen. I don't think I've seen anything for Phandelver campaign. There's something else that I'm currently looking through right now and did some playtest for. I don't know how much more I can say, whether it has anything to do with any of these or not.
Yeah,
you gotta love those non-disclosure agreements.
I know. Yeah, we were playtesting when we were playtesting 5e. We playtested the Phandelver Adventure, the starter set. I think you played with us, John. Then I'm not sure if you did or not, John Jones.
I don't remember.
So yeah, that's what I'm doing this next year.
Lost Mines of Phandelver is I beat my chest about that. That is the best opening. Like if you've never played D&D before, running it for new players, it is the best.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the best starter set. It takes maybe more DM overall knowledge and stuff than the other starter sets, maybe. But it's definitely, I think, the best of the three so far.
Yeah,
I agree. When I did my list of top 10 adventures after 1985, I ranked Phandelver in that list, and I think it still stands there. It's exciting to see them extend it with the. But why now? Why not 3 years ago? 5 years ago, when everyone was finishing Phandelver and looking for what's next.
Well, the question too is like, is it actually a continuation of that story directly? Like, all right, you're level 6 now. Here's the rest of the campaign, right? Or is it many years have passed since you did XYZ and something else has come up in Phandelver that's super important, right? But I think that from a branding perspective, if the starter set for so long, people know what Phandelver is, maybe that's one of the reasons why they went to it, is because again, it's like McDonald's, it is not good or healthy at all, but like, it, what the burger is going to taste like before you put it in your mouth.
All right, that's it for me for 2023. How about you, Jon Jones?
Mostly I run home games, so I'll keep running my home game with all the Dragonlance stuff that I'm very excited about. I'm secretly planning how I can TPK my current Eberron game, so that. It's for me, it's been a lot of years since I've been to a con. Between some personal stuff years ago and then COVID. So I'm in a place where I'm looking at trying to get back into it, and probably also looking to judge some too, or to DM some as well. I just got out of the habit years ago and haven't been back. So I'm dying to get back to it.
Yeah, it's nice to DM for random people. It really kind of builds your skills as a DM. Plus, you get to see what people are, what the game's like, because you sit in your own little home and play with your group of friends, and the world will pass you by if you're not careful. So,
yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it too, John. I encourage you, and I'll be sending good vibes your way. You'll be able to do it. I'm with Tom on this. I only started doing organized play really like in 2019, and so. It was home games. And I think the difference that I've noticed is that, to Tom's point, when you're with your home players, you know all their nuances, you know what they like, you know what they're into, you know how to like push their buttons and what makes them laugh and things like that. You get really, really comfortable in it. And I think that, I'm not saying that our skills get stagnant, but at least whenever you're you're using the same skills over and over and over again, as much as you may try to do something new, your players are like, whoa, man, what are you trying to do something new for? Like,
it's not so much they get stagnant, but they get narrow. And if you get some practice DMing for strangers, whether at your local game store or a convention, it's a huge way to improve your skills.
Table management, even for table management alone, right? If it's not like narrative or RP or anything like that, sometimes dealing, for lack of a better word, dealing with certain kinds of player types, right? The min-maxer, the table captain, the know-it-all, the disruptor, all those different, like those folks that will be at your table without you coming off as a jerk. Like, how do I manage this person's and keep them from like damaging the experience of everybody else at the table? It's thrust upon you whenever you're running in person for those organized play sessions. And for Tom, I did one stint of D&D XP. And so for those that are not in the know of what a D&D XP track is, you get the same DM for 3 to 4 modules, adventures, or whatever at a convention or at a VDDW. And it's great for a DM because once you go through that first round, you start to know your players and you can start to like give them exactly what they want every single time. And I enjoyed it the one time that I did it. It was fine. But man, I would have found myself preferring being out in the quote unquote wild, like a rando table of people that I have no idea what I'm going to get. and then trying to like give them the best possible experience. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And I love going there and playing and seeing how the different DMs do things.
Yeah,
and learning
absolutely.
new tips from them. That's how I learned half the things I do is watching other DMs doing it.
Steal everything.
Yep.
Steal it all, man. Like all my skills, I didn't do them in a vacuum. It's even the home groups, I would get burned out or something like that, and somebody else would run, and I'd be like, "Ooh, I like the way that so and so did that. That was cool. I like that."
Yeah. And then it's fun to run the same adventure multiple times for different groups and see how the groups handle the adventure.
Yes.
Plus, you come across looking like a good DM by the third or fourth time you run it.
Right. Just muscle memory at that point.
Yeah, that's right.
One of the
They're like, how did you do that so good?
Yeah,
well, it's the fifth time I've done it. So
it's the fifth time. One of the fun things about running the same adventure over and over again, I can see that some people might think that would be kind of a grind, but it's a really entertaining from the DM's perspective to see the butterfly effect work out with the adventure, and you can experiment with the way you present things and just change them in subtle ways, and then watch different groups latch on to, maybe you highlighted a description of an NPC a little differently, and they'll take that in a totally different direction, and the adventure will work out very differently from the other times you ran it, and it can be very entertaining to sit back at that control panel, so to speak.
Well, that's a really good point, though. It's like it shifts from, okay, I have to make them happy, I have to entertain people, and it's about me making sure that they're good, to like, you as the DM, you kind of like you get to enjoy it in a different way. It's like, now I'm not only am I like engaging, I'm also an observer in what's going on here, and
you can learn from your little experiments. How you present things.
Why musicians play scales, right? Your iteration and experimentation and stuff like that. That's all, how we get better at things.
Mm-hmm.
And the butterfly effect was literal when I ran Dragons of Divinity. John,
oh, really?
Know about that reference?
Oh, yes. Wink. Yeah, that one. Call back.
All right. Well, that's about all I have. Anyone else have anything to throw in?
I'll be at. I think I mentioned already, but I'll be at Winter Fantasy also. We talked about that a little bit. But outside of Winter Fantasy, I'll also be at Origins, Gen Con. I'm trying to go to Gary Con and Gamehole Con. We'll see how that works out for both of those.
That's the 5 big ones. I'm going to do Origins, and I'm going to do Gen Con for sure. My kids go to Gen Con with me. That's kind of a bring the kids thing. They love the cosplay. It's
so big.
Yeah.
I go to, like, I'll probably morning hot take. I don't like Gen Con. Like, I like it. It's a gaming convention, but I tend to like turtle in a particular area because there's just so much crap going on. There's like 80 to 90,000 people there, and just a goo gobs. Like, just going on the dealer floor, like ADHD kicks in hard, and I was like, just like completely overwhelmed by everything that's out there. So like, I think Origins or lower are probably like my butter zone cons, but I'm still going. I'm looking forward to it.
What killed the dealer hall for me at Gen Con was Kickstarter. At the same kind of like idea of what people are doing and experimenting and playing around with. And what I used to love wandering around the dealer hall to see all the different things that people were doing to help run your game. And now you just hit Kickstarter.
Yes. Yeah, it is. So quite a bit like that.
Yeah. And so what I always liked about Gen Con was the promise of being able to try a different game system, because I'm that guy. It's like, oh, well, you guys are running this, I'm going to go try True 20, or I'm going to go try Savage Worlds, or I'm going to go try Blades in the Dark, or whatever. And the problem was those games were always so small at the cons, it was really hard to get into any of them. So I ended up just sort of ending up in D&D games anyway.
Yeah.
So Winter Fantasy just sort of like settles you in on what you're going to do, and it's going to be fine. And you only pack one type of stuff.
Yes, that's what I've explained to my buddies that have asked me about it. It's like, if you want to go and play the crap out of some D&D, you don't want to play a little D&D. If all you want to do is play D&D, then you go to Winter Fantasy, because you got really great DMs. It's super chill, very relaxed, and it's almost like a home game environment of how relaxed it is. And the DMs are really good, and you'll just play the crap out of D&D.
Oh, especially this year with 3 campaigns, 6 adventures for the Moonshade campaign. 3 different epics. You could, play a lot of D&D.
Go whole hog, baby.
All right. Any last words, David?
No, I'm just looking forward to what's ahead.
Okay, we'll sign out here. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you at Winter Fantasy, John.
Yep. See you there. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, fellas.
Bye.
Bye.